first meeting of the Accessibility and Advisory Committee, or Advisory Committee on Accessibility and Inclusiveness to order. First, I want to acknowledge that we're in the traditional territories of the Snake First Nation and other First Nations people. Introduction of late items. Ms. Robertson.
There is none, Madam Chair.
May I have a motion for the adoption of the agenda as presented? Moved by Sean, seconded by Councillor Eastmere. All in favor? Seeing none opposed, motion carries. Has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes, and is there any errors or omissions? Not seeing any. Could I please have somebody move adoption of the minutes? Moved by Nicole, seconded by Sean. Call the question, all in favor? Seeing none opposed, passes. Okay, we're going to be moving, before we move on, I did want to acknowledge, we just had the recent death of Helen Poon, who was a councillor with Port Alberta, and she was the first transgender councillor in the province, and she did so much work around inclusiveness and stuff in Port Alberta, and she died tragically in a car accident in New Zealand. So I just would like to pass on my condolences and just acknowledge all the work that she did to help further inclusiveness, not only in the city but in the province. So now we're going to call on our delegations. Ms. Veronica Buck. She's a Regional Partnership Engagement Manager with the Royal BC Museum, engaging on a more accessible and inclusive museum. Just grab a seat there, Veronica, and welcome. Good to have you at the table.
Does you want the seat or do you want to present at the podium? What did we decide?
There is, you can't see anybody if they're at the podium.
Okay,
so
all right. Thanks for that. Okay.
All right.
And please forgive me if I overtalk this
Yeah.
mic, but thank you all. It's really good to see some of the faces that I know from many years here, and some new faces. And I wanted to say thank you for having me here. And it's nice to see Trustee Brespich up there. Where am I looking at you? There. My name is Veronica Buck. I am the Regional Partnership Manager with the Royal BC Museum. It's a very long title, but I'm part of a very small engagement team that is into its phase 2 process of bringing the museum to all of BC. And that means that we are more than a Museum of Victoria. We're a Museum of British Columbia. So that's why I'm here today, because we are undertaking a multi-year province-wide process to engage with and learn from the public, from key partners, government, First Nations, urban Indigenous, Inuit, Métis, and how we envision the future of the Royal BC Museum. And one of those is to actually look at changing the name of the museum. So the museum over the last few years has encountered various challenges. One of them is the building, the infrastructure, and the community engagement process, where a lot of the processes were not undertaken as well as they could have been. And that's why our team is on board now to bring about a more inclusive and accessible museum to the rest of BC. So that's why I'm here today, to say that what we're doing is embarking on different community participatory based methodologies or methods to engage the communities across BC. And Nanaimo is one of the regions, the cities that is in my purview, and because I have been in the past a very long-term resident here with the school district, raising my children here. It's a very important community to me, and I would like to know how we as a museum could represent Nanaimo and be more relevant to bringing what we have to museum to collaborate with what's going on here in Nanaimo. I did bring a handout there about our Indigenous collections. Yes, I can provide more when needed, but what I'd like to say is that part of the engagement is going to galleries, libraries, archives, and museums across the province and letting them know that we're in repatriation processes. We are having advisory councils on inclusivity, accessibility, which Trustee Brosevich is part of, one of our accessibility advisories at the museum. And we're just looking to engage with our communities and have discussions about how we can be more relevant, how we can be more accessible, how we can provide programs that that schools, cities, museums can access, and how we can collaborate and co-create different things that enhance each city that we're in discussions with and we're collaborating with. So. Yeah, I don't really have much more to say than we are very open to hearing what Nanaimo as a community needs, and want to keep that engagement process and keep dialogues going, and initiating those really important conversations, because the input from our communities, the input from Nanaimo, is going to instruct how we move forward with the entire community and the city and organizations and education and all of that. So if there are any questions, I think I had 5 minutes. Tried to practice this, but you know how that goes. But I'm really excited about what the museum has to offer in the future and how it wants to collaborate, and it's doing that in a really good way. And this has to be done because it wasn't, all of these processes were not done as well and as inclusive as they could have been. And we're here now to face that challenge and say that we're very open to the discussion. We're open to hearing how we can do better and how we can move forward.
I guess because what
I'm just gonna have to ask you to put your hand up so you can call.
I did. Oh, sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so hearing from Nanaimo, I mean, we're a big community with 100 and some odd thousand people in it. And so what I'm interested in, I think we represent similarly many communities in British Columbia. In terms of, but I think we as people or groups of people with lived experience would maybe be interested in knowing how we can contribute to the shared history of British Columbia. So as people from Nanaimo or people from any region, what is our opportunity to bring our own lived experience and lived history into the museum? I think that's something that's interesting, whether that's the history of Nanaimo specifically, the mines, or some of the 5 acres properties, or whether it's the individual groups within Nanaimo, disability history, or Indigenous history, or Asian history, or Chinese history. So what is our opportunity to contribute to the living history of the museum?
That's a really good question. I'm glad you asked it. We're already doing that. We have right now in the museum, there is in our Old Town the Asian history. We've already collaborated with people in Nanaimo to bring that history there to the museum. So that's already happening. We are currently working with the Vancouver Island University in paleontology to look at what was dug up at Cranberry Arms when that was happening. We have palm fronds from the Cretaceous period. We have that collaboration going on with Vancouver Island University. So we're doing events with Nanaimo Museum. We're working with our Indigenous nations, so Nanaimo. I actually brought that flyer that has a bit of information in there. So we're already doing those collaborative things. We just want to do more of it and make it more fluid, because we do have curators. We have archivists that are already working in many areas here in Nanaimo. But it has not been a very fluid, well communicated collaboration. We want more of it. We want it to be more, we want to bolster that. So many opportunities, continuing opportunities to bring Nanaimo and all that it has to offer, its mining history, its First Nations, the contributions, the lived experience, all of it. And that's why we are open to these new engagement processes. So, yes, thank you. I don't know if that's.
Tanya?
Thank you. I just was going to say, as somebody who's been part of the engagement process on the committee that Veronica mentioned, it's absolutely been a great experience so far. We are going down. In fact, I will be going to Victoria in February, and we're going to do an actual tour of the museum. I want to say there's about 6 of us in the group that I'm in, and it's been a really fulsome discussion about what accessibility means in the broad spectrum, not just mobility, but and the things that we think about, obviously, like mobility and visual, but and sight and hearing. But we've been talking about sensory kids with sensory issues. We've been talking about poverty and actual ways of helping people connect to the museum if you can't get there physically. And it's just been a really good process so far. So one of the things that I've been committing to do, that I'm committed to doing, is now that the holiday is over, is I want to talk more to the school district and find out how often we do field trips down to the museum, and if there are ways that maybe we might want to virtually connect more and that kind of program, because I think that really is a way of really supporting some of the things that we do in the school district in terms of our curriculum around Indigenous history and a variety of different things. I mean, even right now, what they're doing, the one that's just ending, the dinosaur exhibit, would fit with some really cool stuff for some of our science classes. So I think we're doing some really good work here, is all I was going to say.
Thank you, Trustee Brozovich. It's been a pleasure working with you as well, on the advisory councils. You mentioned several things there that are already in the process, and some things that you've brought forward, which is really helpful. The digitalization, it's a very
Battery
hard word for me to say.
70%. Richard's iPhone. What Lindsay's S2 MOTHERSHIP.
Richard, I think you're,
I just muted him. Okay.
I was like thinking, I didn't do that, did I? We have, right now, we actually have a survey going on, and I invite everyone to take a look at the museum's website. We've formed with GDX, which is the citizen engagement of the province, to put a survey of about 20 questions, including the infrastructure of the museum and the needs around that, to how we want to be more involved in communities across BC. So that's going to be live, I believe, on tomorrow, the 11th. So we've had, it's going to be front facing, it's going to be public all around. So I'm also trying to get our school districts from 69 to 72 to engage on their websites with offering the survey to families and communities, their school communities. So there's a lot of stuff going on there. We're improving the access for schools to access the archives, the indigenous collections, all of those things. We're trying to get those into curriculum, as Trustee Brozovich said. So a lot of things on the move, but we do need that continuous input of what our communities actually want, and our school communities, what they actually need to have a fulsome curriculum. So all of those things are vibrant and moving.
Tanya, did you have a follow-up? I see your hand still up.
Yeah. Yes, I just was going to say, if there's any way I can assist you with connecting with school districts, I'm happy to do that. I'm on the Vancouver Island School Trustees Association. We have a committee, and so I have connections with all the districts on the island. If you want me to help you, if you're having trouble getting that through.
We are talking on the 17th, so I was counting on it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it's, by the way, everybody, it's just Tanya. I don't, one of the things the school district is trying to do is as part of our decolonization is we don't use our titles. So I'm very much prefer to be called Tanya.
Thank you. I like trustee though, because trust, we're not even
True,
going to start about my
true.
inclusiveness. Yeah, I like yeah, in you I trust. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
fair.
thank you.
Anyways, so yes, just let us know if there's anything we can do.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Any other questions at the table? Nicole?
I'm just, so much of museums is now more than the visual and the reading and their experience and touching. Is there any plan to bring exhibits beyond the Victoria space? Like, I mean, we are relatively close, but even that for many families and schools is too far for like a field trip, say. Is there any plan for like mobile exhibits?
Traveling exhibits.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And it's nice to see you again, Nicole. Absolutely. That is, so we've always had, or the museum has always, yeah, for many years has had smaller traveling exhibits. We're not just a museum, we're a research center. We develop our own exhibits. So we are looking at improving that, upping our offerings, but we do have existing exhibits that go around BC. So that's the other thing, letting communities know that those things are available, right? And that we want to improve on them, and how can we make them more relevant to each community. We're looking at our budget for upping the number of traveling exhibits that we can do that are going to be available province-wide. So yeah, absolutely. And we're looking at improving it in so many ways. So
I'll just follow up on that too, because I think our museum here is pretty good for a small community. Like, I really enjoy it. So, maybe there's a connection between the two where we could do that. I want to follow up on something that Sean said, because I agree with what he said, but we have a Chinese cemetery here, which is, the Chinese have a huge history here. So I think it's important that we look at that as well. Even like the explosion where we lost, people down on in the 70s at the refinery there, when there's, I think, 6 died or something. Like little things like that. Morton Mine to me is another one that really comes to mind that, that forms a lot of our culture. But where my question is going to go to, here in Nanaimo, we have the LEAP program for those that are living in poverty or are really struggling financially. Is there a program available like that for people to apply to, so that they can go down to the museum and not have to pay all this money for like a family of 4 or 5?
And thank you, Councillor Armstrong. That is exact. All right, Cheryl, because we go back a ways. Thank you. Yeah, we're looking at that. That we have comment cards for each week. We go through the comment cards that people fill out who come into the museum, and one of the questions that always comes up is, can this be more? We don't have money. How do we access this stuff? So that's definitely like priority number one.
I was thinking, because here in the city we have the LEAP program, which is very regulated and looked after. The city's done a great job, Parks and Rec's now. So if they were able to even just produce their LEAP card down there, so then you don't have to do all the invent a new system. And I imagine other cities have similar programs. So if you recognize that, okay, somebody brings a LEAP card, or a card, whatever, just for the name, we know that these people have been screened, they can't afford to pay. So it's not reinventing the wheel, it's just, these are documented, programs that really are.
Yeah, making the wheel easier to turn.
Yeah. Because I always find people try to reinvent stuff, when a lot of cities have great programs in place, and all you gotta do is, a LEAP card is usable in this community or whatever other communities use.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because Nanaimo is one of the places that we're looking at some of the things that you've made where we have made more accessible, bringing that to Victoria. We're part of our engagement process was looking at how Nanaimo did reimagine Nanaimo, and that when I brought that forward, we started taking a look at that and thought, hey, that was a pretty good model and how you roll that out. So I would like to say that these suggestions that you have would be something directly that you could address with us at the museum.
Sean?
Yeah, I guess another thing So I just, through the nature of some of the work I've done, I know a lot about the beer history of Nanaimo. And so I know that in many cases, that's one example, but there are often many people who are sitting on kind of archival memories. So collectors and groups and individuals like that. And I wonder if there's a way to find out how to work with those groups or people to get them to share some of that or to support them in sharing that with the public. I mean, I know probably between 4 people, they have the entire, Nanaimo was the 3rd city in British Columbia to be able to legally brew beer before Victoria was. And there are people that live here that have rooms and rooms and rooms full of that history. And I've always talked with them about how might we create opportunities to share that. So I wonder if there are opportunities to work with groups and communities. It might be groups, Japanese, Chinese groups, Asian groups, people who are just sitting on materials and have that knowledge. And rather than saying, we'll bring that into the museum and we'll archive it and create things, but to facilitate opportunities to support those groups in sharing things in meaningful ways. I wonder if that's something on your radar.
Well, absolutely. Just say yes, it's absolutely on our radar. And this is a big part of our community engagement team, is that we're looking for ways that all of other cities can participate, can show what they have, can have other places in BC engage with what we have. So Nanaimo actually has a pretty strong relationship right now in pockets with the museum. We've worked with, I want to address the Nanaimo Museum, who's, it's a really, really great museum, and Sophia's doing an amazing job. We've already partnered, and we continue to partner with the museum. We've done displays and things to help out with the current displays that are there, shared materials. So the opportunity to highlight certain things that are happening in Nanaimo that we want to bring to the forefront, absolutely opportunities are there. To house anything at the museum at this point, because we're still dealing with the challenge of the infrastructure of the museum, like, are we going to continue with the same space that's outdated, seismically, unsound? How we go on with addressing an $800 million question about how we have a new museum, or do we not? It speaks to, can we house anything? How will we exhibit? How will we keep things safe? So those questions are ongoing, but this is why we're talking today, is that we're open to how can we make something happen, right?
Just a quick thing, I know when we talked at the consultation about how your old town, or how like Nanaimo Museum is now looking at including Japanese Canadian history, but not doing just like, here's the wall about Japanese Canadian history. It's gonna be like, here's, in the lumber industry, Japanese Canadians were here. In the mining industry, Japanese Canadians were here, and talking about, well, this is the salary that a Japanese Canadian miner would make, that kind of thing. So is that, I know there was like some talk, is that happening with Old Town? Is that?
Well, Old Town has we brought Old Town back in a way, but we've reimagined it, and we've put up what would we call them? We interactive pieces where it clarifies a lot of information. You just don't go in there and like imagine for yourself. We clarify what this presents, what the railroad presents, how it, there were black porters here. We have that part with Asian communities. This is what the Chinese did. This is how Japanese. So we're really clarifying. This wasn't done in the past. Old Town was really just kind of a specialized area. Now it really is an integrative space, and it's a more informative space, and definitely more inclusive, and we're still working on it. There are parts of Old Town that we're not opening yet until we have discussed with community and had more community input. And this is a really big push for our engagement team, is that the inclusivity, the diversity is represented in spaces and places like like Old Town. So yeah, we've, and it's been as you know, it's been precarious in balancing out. Well, this is Victoria. No, actually, this is not just Victoria. This is in the entire province, and it has to be representative of all our communities and all our communities that have helped to build the way that things are. So,
Wendy?
thank you.
I'm going way back because one thing that we do have in BC is the card for people with a diverse ability. My brain has gone. I can't remember, but there is an access card. Can you remember what it is, Sean?
Yes, it's the access to entertainment.
Yes.
Access
So people with a diverse ability can get into the museum at a lower cost. Is that right? Yeah. So I'm going to pass this information about the survey onto BC People First.
Thank you. That's
Mr. Hardy?
Just want to let the community know, I think maybe you already do know, but we've already added our museum and art gallery to our LEAP card. So we've already worked out agreements with, so even though that by donation, it's that feeling that you come in and at least show a card that you don't feel like you need to do donations. So that's already, those organizations have already come into our LEAP card program.
Thank you for that.
I see Jocelyn.
That was just an applause. I'm really glad to hear that. Thanks, Richard.
And to speak more to that, thank you. We've just brought back, and we wrapped up last week, the Community Week, where we have had donation and not even reduced cost, just by donation, and we had amazing number of families and communities come in and access the museum and all the exhibits and archives. So we're looking at, slowly bringing things back and reorganizing so that, we can make things more accessible. And we have to look at the costs because that, as I said before, it's a concern. It's a huge concern. And especially when the province is looking at, housing, and we're doing that in all our communities, and accessibility, and we need to make things more available to everyone. So, yeah.
Okay, I'm looking, any further questions from the table? Any further questions on Zoom? Seeing none, I really want to thank you, Veronica. That was very informative. Thank you for, and this group is always willing to engage. The previous group was very active in Reimagine and IMO, and this group, I'm assuming, is very, well, they already have, we're very engaged in trying to make it better physically as well as for mobility issues and other diversity. So we're always here.
And I'm
If
glad
you want to
you
send
are.
questionnaires out, feel free, because I know we will all answer them and do our best for
I
you.
would love to do that, and I think we require your
Great, thank you so much. Okay, moving on now, we're going to go to Mr. Hardy, who's going to introduce the Integrated Action Plan overview.
Yeah, so great transition. I'll just do quickly, and Ms. Brinkman and Ms. Notley are going to do the presentation. But I just want to bring to the committee just a quick overview of city plan, very, very quickly on city plan, but more so an introduction to the committee on the integrated action plans. What council wanted to do is, once city plan was adopted, was not have it static, but have it a living document. And so they directed staff to come up with a number of integrated action plans. And I'll turn it over to you guys now, but I think one of the things I just want to make sure the community knows is integrated action plans are a living document and an active document. Council reviews it every year. So what we present to you is what we think are some great priorities. Those can change. They can change by input from a committee, and they'll change by council as they get the information going forward. But with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Brinkman, Ms. Notley, who did all the work on this. I did not.
Thank you, and when I first heard about this, I was kind of on the fence, but I think it is really good. Like Richard said, a lot of the questions you've asked will be answered by Ms. Brinkman, so you know where we've got to and how we've gotten there. I always forget because I've heard this so many times, so it's like, oh, people know that. No, we don't. So thank you very much for thinking about it.
Thank you for the introduction. I'm just going to try out this microphone. Can everybody hear me clearly? Okay, great. Yeah, my name's Lisa Brinkman. I'm manager of community planning, and And I'll be presenting this with Emily, who's also in community planning. And so the integrated action plan is really a plan for the entire city, for all the departments in the city. It's our to-do list in a way. And so we'll start, and now actually, should I just say to move? Yeah. Or do you want to just do it for me?
Oh, sorry. Could you just quickly confirm that they can see the slides moving ahead on there?
Can you see it on Zoom?
Moving?
Yeah, they're all good.
Can they see them moving?
Yeah.
Perfect.
I got mine on, so I'll tell you if I can.
Should I just say next slide to you?
Should be able to. Say next slide.
Okay, we'll do it that way. Great. Okay. So we'll introduce the integrated action plan. We'll talk about how that document is structured. We'll talk about how it fits with city plan and the monitoring strategy. And then we'll focus on the accessibility, inclusiveness actions that are in there. So we'll talk about some examples from there. And we have Richard Harding and Bill Sims to help us with that last part of it as well. Next slide, please. Moving forward, great. So, so the purpose of the integrated action plan is to communicate the full breadth of actions the City of Nanaimo may consider undertaking in the ongoing short and long term. So we've broken the actions out into ongoing actions, short and long term. So city plan is an official community plan, so it's our land use plan, it's our park rec and culture plan, it's our transportation plan, our reconciliation plan, accessibility and inclusion plan. So it really, our city plan is that policy document that is really our guiding document for all the things the city is doing, the different departments are doing. And the integrated action plan are the actions. How are we going to make those policies happen? How are we going to do that? So it's all the different actions that the city's going to do to make that happen. Next slide. Now, it is a large document, so there is a link to it on the last slide. If you haven't had a chance to look at it, maybe after this, or maybe you have, but after this, maybe you'd like to. There's hundreds and hundreds of actions in there. We call it the library of actions. It's almost, yeah, and partly because it's covering everything that the city does in many ways. And so in that document, it's broken out into programs and projects. So programs are something more that would be integrated throughout the whole city, so generally. And projects are going to be location specific. So a project might be a park, that improvements to a park or something like that, where a program is like the LEAP program that Richard talked about. That's sort of for everybody in the city. And then the integrated action plan breaks it down into, are these actions ongoing? So is this something that the city kind of does every year? Or is this an immediate action that's something that needs to be done, and then immediate for us is the next 4 years? Or is it something future that can wait till after? We do want to get it done. It's not a priority. It can wait till after the 4 years. So that's sort of, that's how you'll see the actions sorted in the integrated action plan. Next slide, please. Okay, here's an example page from the plan, and see what I have here. So this is sort of an introductory page. So in city plan, you have is broken down into a green Nanaimo, a connected Nanaimo, a healthy Nanaimo, an empowered Nanaimo, and a prosperous Nanaimo. And the integrated action plan is broken down into that same way, into those same sections. So it really matches and mirrors the city plan sections. And so this is a sort of a sample introductory page to a section, and just talks about the city's role to make that action happen or to implement that policy. But sometimes there's other organizations in the city that are key partners to make that happen, so it talks about that as well. And just to note that the actions in the integrated action plan, you know, when we first put it together, we're drawing from a lot of documents that had been created by the city over the years. So pulling actions from the old, you know, neighborhood plans, or from the Parks and Rec plan or transportation plan, or different actions that had been on council's radar or council motions. So we tried to pull all of that together into one document rather than it sitting in many documents. So next slide. So here's a sample page of actions from the integrated action plan. And as we talked about, it's broken down into ongoing, immediate, and future. Each action has a reference number, and each has a description, so to be very clear about what the action is about. And each action is related to a city plan policy, so we actually have a reference showing how that action will implement a policy and city plan. So when we first were working with the general manager team and city staff and put together that large library of actions, we realized we needed to really pick a priority. So priority actions for the next 4 years. So staff worked with council to identify 200 priority actions. So you'll see at the front of the integrated action plan, 200 priority actions that were selected with mayor and council. It's really important ones to get done in the next 4 years. Next slide, please. And then you'll also see we really tried to map the projects just to demonstrate how projects are being completed throughout the city. And so you'll see these maps throughout the document as well. Okay, and lastly for me, here's the front page of City Plan, our policy document that was adopted by Council in July 2022. And so these 3 documents sit together as a set, and then an integrated action plan was endorsed by Council in July of 2023. And what's being worked on all throughout 2023, and we hope to bring to Council very soon, is the monitoring strategy. So what we'll be doing is monitoring, are our actions effective and achieving the outcomes that we want? And how are we going to monitor that? And how are we going to track that and determine, should we be changing the actions to achieve the outcome we want? So stay tuned more for the monitoring strategy, and that's being led by our sustainability team, Ting Pan. Next slide. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Emily.
Thank you, Lisa, and everybody for having us. I'll just pick up here. As Lisa mentioned, there's a list of priority actions from the larger library itself. And we wanted to go over just a few to touch on what this group is likely most interested in those priority actions, which is the accessibility and inclusiveness actions. So one thing we really wanted to make clear in this presentation is that, as Lisa had mentioned previously, there is no longer sort of these separate plans. They come under this umbrella of city plan. And what's really neat and different about this plan, what sets Nanaimo apart from many different municipalities, is that accessibility and inclusiveness is woven throughout city plan and throughout the IAP, the Integrated Action Plan. So you'll see in these 5 different sections of what makes up the city plan and integrated action plan, which is the green, connected, healthy, empowered, and prosperous, is that there are actions within each of those 5 sections that relate to accessibility and inclusiveness, which wasn't the case when they were all individual plans. So under green, when we're thinking about things that have to do with sustainability, tree canopy cover, these sorts of things, we found two different actions within that section that relate to accessibility and inclusiveness. Similarly, under connected, there were 5, and again, these are priority items. So there were 25 actions under connected, 5 of which related to accessibility and inclusiveness. Under healthy, there are 46 priority actions, 7 of which relate to accessibility and inclusiveness. 64 under empowered priority actions, but there are 27 that relate to accessibility and inclusiveness, and those will be the ones that we will talk about throughout the rest of this presentation and touch on just a few that the city has undergoing currently. Under prosperous, there are 21 actions, priority actions, and two of which relate to accessibility and inclusiveness. We'll go to the next slide if we can. So this is just a bit of a preview of sort of what the integrated action plan actually looks like. It's a lot of tables, But so this one is just recreated for this purpose, and we'll just go over a few of them. So as Lisa mentioned, there's a reference number given to each of the programs, and then a description of what that program is intended to do. So of course, in that first one, continue to hold an advisory committee on accessibility and inclusiveness to meet the Accessibility British Columbia Act. We can attest to that we're doing that here today, and we'll continue to do that in the future. Another one, review and update the accessibility plan and other city policies and actions at least every 3 years to identify, remove, and prevent barriers to meet Accessibility BC Act. Another one that was mentioned earlier today was the LEAP program. So we continue to offer the LEAP Leisure Economic Access Pass to support citizens in financial need to access parks, recreation, and culture community programs and services. So that's, of course, a program that the city offers and will continue to. Maybe we'll go on to the next slide, unless there are any that folks want to discuss further or have questions, but maybe we can do that at the end too. Another one was is provide staff with equity, diversity, and inclusion training, resources, and tools to engage and support all community members. So this is something that is happening right now at staff level. Recently, folks in the city were able to do training on the LGBTQ+2 and initiatives in that realm. Another one, the next one down, is identified as a priority action with that star and shaded in gray is how we identify them in the actual plan. So this one includes revising the internal style guide to standardize gender inclusive and gender neutral in municipal communications. So that is a priority of council. Hosting an annual newcomers welcome event in partnership with Central Vancouver Island Multicultural Society. This is something that happened last year around this time and is set to happen again in the new year coming up. We can go to the next slide. So 2 more priority actions here: establish and support the Advisory Committee on Accessibility and Inclusiveness. So we are doing that. Work with the Advisory Committee on Accessibility and Inclusiveness and other organizations to identify ways of creating welcoming, inclusive atmospheres in the city, including city-owned facilities. Again, with the LEAP program, implementing phase 2 of the LEAP program, city staff are currently working with Big Brothers Big Sisters as a referral program. So that's something that's currently underway. The next one down, which is to adapt, create recreation programming offered in the activity guide to be inclusive and equitable for children, youth, adults, and seniors. This is something that the city is also working on by offering free and reduced fees for different activities in the city. Go to the next slide, please. There are 2 more priority actions here. So one item that I believe came to this committee not too long ago was to continue and to explore implementing existing and emerging technologies to improve access to city services online, via phone, in person, for citizens with audio-visual accessibility needs. Okay, we'll go to the next slide, please. So this first one here, offer recreation programs in partnership with other organizations that are inclusive and accessible for all ages and abilities, such as the Lions Free Skate and Swim, Active Pass, Stay Active, and Winter Wonderland. So the city is happy to report that the Winter Wonderland had just over 6,000 people participate this last winter, which I'm sure Richard can tell me if I'm wrong, but I believe is free, a free program as well?
They're all sponsored, every escape was sponsored, so even the rentals and the helmets were all free.
So a successful program there. The next one down, in partnership with Canucks Autism Network, work to support and the delivery of swimming and skating lessons for children with autism. There was training with staff done for that program recently. The work in collaboration with Ministry of Children and Families to integrate children with diverse abilities into mainstream summer camp programming. That managed to keep on going through despite COVID, so that's a successful program in itself. I think we'll skip to the next slide. So Priority Action Council is to work with the Regional District of Nanaimo Transit to improve the visibility and uniformness of transit stops so that they're universally accessible for all citizens. And we'll go to the next slide. Working to expand the adaptive hockey and other sport programs tailored towards youth and adults with diverse abilities. So this program is growing quite successfully as well. In fact, many are competing outside of Nanaimo right now, so that's great. The next one down, which is to work towards relaunching and expanding the social club, a partnership to provide programs and meeting space for people with diverse abilities. That took a break for a short time during COVID, but is coming back as well. The next slide, please. So, as part of developing accessible and adaptable housing policy, there's been some work going on currently and in late of last year to do some research and incentivize private homeowners, landowners, developers, not-for-profit housing providers to build new and update existing buildings and spaces to be adaptable and accessible, which includes market and affordable developments. Similarly, the next one down, which some of that evidence was through our increasing housing options that we have been working on, and there's some great things happening there as well. But if there's no more that we want to discuss, maybe we can just take questions from there in the next slide. We've also provided a link to the Integrated Action Plan, which just gets you to the website where the city plan is also available.
We'll just get the sharing off so that I can see the screen. Okay, looking up on the screen, is there anybody on the screen on Zoom that has a question? You're not seeing any on Zoom at the table, Sean?
I'm curious about the language of diversability. In the disability sector, both federally and provincially, there's movement away from those sorts of terms, like that kind of carry a connotation of words like handy-capable or whatever, that they're not effectively representing disabled people or people with disabilities. And that's probably a language question or an inclusive language question, but I'm just curious about the use of that language in these documents and what that's, what we mean when we say people with diverse abilities, I guess.
I just answered part of that. One of the problems is before it used to be accessible, then we were told by the federal government they wanted to change it to diversable. So it depends.
It changes all the time.
Yeah, it's constant because people didn't like the accessible term. So then they wanted to go to diverse because they didn't think it was as, I don't know what the right term would be. Stigmatizing, because diverse means everybody's got different abilities. And, so you don't know, right?
It's just what was kind of being used at the time.
Yeah, because we know
Okay.
Yeah, so that's sort of Richard.
Yeah, no, thank you, Councillor Armstrong, that's exactly right. And I think, again, one of the strengths of this committee would be as language does evolve, and the way now documents can be, we can change the language in the document. And especially the breadth of knowledge that we have with the people around the table can help guide us on some best terminology also.
And we use it at NMCL, so I'm not opposed to it, I'm just curious.
But there's nothing saying we can't develop our own term.
Yeah.
That we may find is from everybody's perspective at this table, that we may find is more acceptable to people. So something to think about, like if you do think of something that you would prefer to use or a term that you think we can look at, we can certainly bring it to the table at another meeting and have open discussion around pros and cons. And we may just find ourselves with new term. Because we're not, I don't think we're handicapped by having to use the provincial, or I think we have to use the provincial for accessibility and inclusiveness committee, but I don't think we're hampered by doing it in any of our documents. Something I can check into. That's a really good point. I think that's excellent. I mean, it changes all the time. Okay, I see Wendy and then Jocelyn on the screen, then I'll come to Tammy.
So just to update you on the diversibility, it was created by people in the Okanagan, one person in particular, can't remember her name, to stop people using disability. So they see that disability is you're dissing like what they can do. So they really want diversibility to continue to be used. It wasn't some politician who came up with this. It was the ground roots person from BC People First. That's where the initial push came from.
Jocelyn?
I totally acknowledge how difficult it is to talk about, to find the respectful, like most common, and it just a term, and it just highlights that disability is not a monolith. We all are individuals who feel a particular way about how we're spoken about and to. But I understood anything that said diverse abilities in that plan to mean people from the Inclusion BC kind of community, that adults with developmental disabilities in the community I most know, which is adults with physical disabilities. There's a real difference of opinion as well. Some feel very strongly that there is no stigma behind disability as a term. There should be no stigma, and that it's meaningful to acknowledge that there are struggles involved in it. And so it's the identity first versus person first. And so we kind of go back and forth between whatever the individual feels like they want to use on that. But I think out of habit, I have just come to understand that diverse abilities is a term that, as mentioned, like BC People First or other groups that serve that community use for themselves. So I thought that was a subset of the disability community. So that was my misunderstanding, which maybe just highlights that it might be worth the effort to find something that's widely understood, and who it refers to.
So maybe for our purposes, we could have actually a definition of what we mean by diverse ability. You know, that may help clarify, so that we know when the city documents are talking about diversibility, this is what it means, something maybe for us to think about for another meeting. Now I do see, did I see Tammy already? No, Tammy's up and then Sean. Yeah.
So it was me.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I was sitting behind her with my hand up.
That's probably why I missed. I did see the hand. I thought I put down Tammy and Sean.
I have a few questions, but the biggest one is sort of, how do groups seek to partner with Parks and Recreation towards development of new programs and like partnerships? So like C4 through 0.3.7 talks about partnerships on Lions Free Skate, the Stay Active Pass and stuff, and then talking about the physical literacy part, 4.3.9, gym pals and stuff. So the biggest thing that I see is there's accessible programs held by, physically accessible programs held by nonprofits, say Adapt Island or Special Olympics and things like that. But if a child attends a city program, they have access to the Leap Pass, right? So whenever possible, it would be wonderful if some of the programming that is available from outside of the city of Nanaimo's jurisdiction was brought under the activity guide so that families could use their active passes or their LEAP passes to access those things for their children, or I guess for adults as well, right? So I'm curious how an organization that has an idea or has maybe even a program started might, like Canucks Autism Network, bring it to the city and ask for partnership.
I'm gonna, maybe, Adrian, can you take that, or, I just want to introduce Adrian too, I forgot to do that. Adrian is with our city now. She actually was on the committee last year, so she's got a really good understanding of the committee and what it can do. Okay, Richard?
No, it's a great question. I think, so we have a couple programs and ways of doing it. First of all, with, just so people know how we do the active, or the LEAP pass, and again, this committee last term that helped us completely revamp that program, and we're still into the process of doing it. So we again think that program is evolutionary. The people that are accessible to that LEAP program are within what we call the contributing area for taxation.
Mm-hmm.
So within our area, we have the city of Nanaimo, and then we have 3 electoral areas and 1 municipality that contribute into our recreational function. So that's those residents that are paying into our taxation function and live in those areas are with that. That doesn't mean we can't look outwards, it just can be a little bit different. We also have those funding that we call, I'm gonna get the wrong name, but it's, for lack of better words, it's a program development grant. So if a group wants to come and try something that hasn't been started before, maybe we can apply through that. A good example is, is it Sailor Storm?
Yes, that's.
Sailor Storm hockey program, which is a First Nations focused program. We had startup funding for that through this program. It's got a hockey program going that hadn't existed before. And so that's where the intention of that program is to help provide some seed money to get those kinds of innovative or new types of programs off the ground, if that answers your question.
I think it does. I mean, when I said jurisdiction, I didn't mean like geographic jurisdiction. I meant like the programs in the activity guide that we as the city, that the city funds and supports, and quite honestly, like they give priority to facilities to use, right? Mm-hmm. So sometimes, like, we tried to do a para-hockey thing in Nanaimo, couldn't get ice time, went to the regional district, Parksville, got it there, but most of those participants were from Nanaimo. And we don't even have a single, like, you can rent skates and use your LEAP pass to go skating, or your school can rent the ice and go skating on a field trip, but no child can get into a para-hockey sled in Nanaimo. And so I'm curious if say Adapt Island or a hockey group came up with a plan, could they come to the city and say, hey, we'd like this to be part of your offerings, rather than we want to rent the ice and we want to bring our equipment and we want to bring, like, I'm wondering if it would be more accessible to the kids and the adults that actually want to play.
Richard?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Great example and good point, and that's, we know we need to keep changing and adapting, and recreation is typically that, but we know we have to make some more leaps and bounds. So absolutely, if a group organization has ideas or sees something that's lacking, come to staff, let us work with us on that, and or you can propose it through this committee too. So a group could come to this committee and present something that's about accessibility and inclusiveness that we're not doing, and then, you know, make people aware of it and help us see ways of doing it. Ice time is ice time. I mean, there's not enough ice time ever. We only got 4 sheets, but we do make priorities. And so, for example, we were able to get Sailor Storm in, working with Nanaimo Minor Hockey to find some times that worked, and we can still work to find that. Just finding ways to work together. And maybe there's some times of the day that work better for that population than others. So,
And just on that note, we should be, if there are people that have concerns, they can always come here as a delegation. And then we can hear that, and then based on what we hear from the delegation, motions can be made by this group to put to council. So that's something that if you do know of issues like that and they feel that they would like to come to this table first, by all means, please spread the word. All I gotta do is whoever can email legislative services with the CC to myself and Hillary so that we know, and it'll be looked at. So really good point to bring out, thank you. Now you had another question, can I come back to you?
That actually, I think that covers my
If
story.
I could just, one other aspect to it, if I could, Council Chair, is it also just partnering within the activity guide to get programs out. We're also really trying to be more inclusive with a lot of different groups to do that. So even if the group has an idea that they want to either partner with us right away and they already have a program, they want to work it through our facilities or work it, at least get it in the activity guide as a promo. Always looking for those ideas too.
And those go to staff then?
Ideally, start with staff, but you can, if you ever have an issue or they want to make it more aware of, the community groups want to make it more aware, they can come to us. Staff typically were very responsive.
Perfect. That answers my questions.
Oh, sorry. I have
No,
actually
that
the
is-
expert in the back.
Sorry, can I add to that? I'm Amanda, I'm one of the rec coordinators. So spring summer activity guide, our deadline is February 1st, but we do have a program proposal process on our website. So if you have a really good idea and you want to share a program, you can do it that way, or you can contact one of the coordinators. Because we're always looking for ideas. Sometimes, because we can contract with you, if you have an idea, we want to run the program, but we do the registration, there's those kind of options, and working in our rec facilities. Or if you have a really good idea, I have a list of a million ideas, sometimes it's just finding staff. But you can have access to staff that might not, with, that is an expert in a certain area. So there's definitely options to collaborate and work together on those things.
Thank you. Okay, I have Sean.
Thank you. I don't want to, I know there's like part of the work plan is to get into an inclusive language guide. So without getting into that, my experience, and thanks Wendy for bringing that up, diversibility generally is taken to mean people with intellectual or pervasive developmental disabilities in the community. Other communities have different identifiers. So my question was whether when we're seeing diverse abilities in this document, is it meant to refer to populations of people with intellectual or developmental disabilities, or is it about the larger disability community? I think that is a self-identifier that people with diverse abilities use. People with intellectual disabilities use is that diverse ability. So if those things are meant to be inclusive of the larger disability community, including maybe people with neurodivergence or learning disabilities, then that would be a consideration. But if it is specific to people with intellectual disabilities who have chosen to go by diverse abilities, and that makes sense too. So I was just curious.
So I think that's a really good point. I think that's why we need a glossary of what things mean. I think because as we've like for me, coming from the federal government, diverse ability is everybody. You know, so it's
No, thank you, through the chair. Thank you, Sean. I think that's a good question. We can come back and work with staff. My quick answer would be it is the broader. Because we try to do city plan as be as broad as we can.
Sure.
But I think that's good. We want to make sure we're all talking the same language. So when we work with planning, come back to the committee with some glossary of terms of what that is.
Yeah, I think it's really important because everybody here in their own way works with people with different abilities, et cetera. And like we heard from Jocelyn, who's got a different definition in her group, right? So I think it's really important that when this document goes out, people understand what we're saying, what we mean by it for the city's purposes.
And if I just could put back on your question too, I think what maybe another good presentation is Amanda with recreation staff to come and speak of how we try to do programs and find ways, because Amanda answered the question much better than I did, of course. And if she came and did a presentation on how we do our programs and where we want to go, I think that would also provide some ideas.
Consensus at the table, lots and lots, so that would be a great topic for a future meeting. Thank you. Okay, any other questions directed towards the interaction plan? I see none on Zoom, none in the room, so thank you very much, ladies. Appreciate your presentation and answering the questions. So our next one is council business. Just putting up my agenda here. So just so you know, under council communications, we did bring forward the motion on the November 20th meeting. And the work plan as we presented, it was accepted by council, so that's great, so that's done. And then B, this is what we approved, installation of a hearing room at the front counter at 2 city facilities and an adaptive sound field system in the services and resource, which is called the SARC, which is the room we're in. Just for people's knowledge, we call it the SARC room, so if you hear a SARC. So, and then direct staff to return to finance and audit committee to determine funding options for a pilot project. So that was unanimously accepted by council to move forward with that. So I think they're two good pilot projects, and then once we see that, we'll be bringing those results back to this table. Any questions on that? Okay, seeing none, we're going to now go to reports, and it's going to be update on accessibility improvements to city facilities, which will be introduced by Mr. Hardy and then presented by Mike.
Thank you, Chair. And Mike, we'll go from there.
Sure.
Over there. So one of the adopted work plans that you sent to council was the committee wanted to have some say or some input into prioritization of assessment of our facilities. So Mr. Bryson's done a report up of where we've come through, where we're at, and where we're going. And we've provided a quick list of some priority facilities, but the committee can absolutely look at that and change those priorities. What we're looking at today, I just want to make a caveat because before the question is asked, this is really the buildings. We're coming to you with buildings. We also want to come to you in March with open space, so parks and open space. So our parks planner, Chris McDonald, will come with a similar report with some prioritization of accessible reviews for our outdoor spaces.
Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Richard. Good afternoon, everybody. Good to see everyone. So yeah, like Richard said, this is an update on accessibility improvements to the city, proposed as well as some that we've already made. Next slide, please. So the introduction, this refers to the ACAI work plan, which states there the goal of the work plan is to reduce barriers and improve equity and access to city residents to in alignment with the city plan, the integrated action plan priorities, and the terms of reference with the ACAI committee. So the topic on this was accessibility in city parks, facilities, and city infrastructure. And some of the areas around that are the Rick Hansen Foundation priorities for allocation of funds for the audited facilities, determine priority for accessibility audits for the other city facilities, advise city staff on procedures and best practices for reducing barriers in facilities and infrastructure, and advise city staff on specific projects as needed. So the purpose is to provide the advisory committee on accessibility and inclusiveness an update on accessibility improvements carried out at the city recreation facilities as recommended by the Rick Hansen Foundation audit, and to seek direction for the priority of improvements. So the recommendation that we're suggesting is that the ACAI committee recommend the following city recreation centers receive assessments audits in 2024. That includes the Oliver Woods Community Center, Cliff McNabb Arena, the Nanaimo Museum, City Hall in Sark, this facility, Bevan Park Pool, the Nanaimo Ice Center, and the Vancouver Island Military Museum. And as Richard mentioned, this is just priorities as we see them as going forward for recreation facilities or facilities that have a lot of accessibility, and but that can certainly be looked at. Next, please. So the history, some of you have heard me talk about this before. We had 3 facilities were chosen to be audited by the Rick Hansen Foundation last year. It was the Nanaimo Aquatic Center, Frank Crane Arena, and the Bowen Complex. And the assessment made suggestions of areas to improve upon in each facility. And further to that, the Rick Hansen Foundation provided a one-time funding allotment to assist with the identified recommended upgrades. So for the Nanaimo Aquatic Center, just to give you an idea of what we've been doing with some of those funds, and these were recommendations from the Rick Hansen Foundation audit. One was to consider installing additional markings on glazed doors, walls to reduce glare and improve identification for those with vision issues. That is in progress. A lot of these are very close to being completed, but I just put them as in progress because they aren't quite completed. Consider installing additional directional signage at reception area and adjacent hallways. That's in progress. For the most part, it's completed, but there are some, we're looking at adding some more. When we got into this part of the project, realized that there was a lot more signage that really should be included in some of our wayfinding sign upgrades. Consider installing signage using Braille, raised text, and symbols at accessible locations to improve access to washrooms and offices for those who may have reduced vision or blindness. That's in progress. We didn't go with Braille. In discussing with the Rick Hansen Foundation, we decided that all the signs that have a tactile base to them, so they prominently stick out from the sign itself, and they work quite well. Consider installing additional visual fire alarms in accessible washroom and shower areas to alert people with hearing loss of emergency, and that's been completed. To our Frank Crane Arena, some of the areas for improvement, consider improving the accessible parking stalls, including markings for a safe pedestrian route to the facility. That's in progress. A large part of it's been done. The rest of it will be completed in the spring. Consider installing additional directional signage at reception area and adjacent hallways. That also is in progress. Consider installing directional signage in the lobby reception area to improve wayfinding for all spaces, including washroom, elevator, and interior services. That's in progress. And consider installing signage including Braille, raised text, and symbols at accessible locations to improve access to washrooms and offices for those who may have reduced vision or blindness. And this is in progress. We did most of the signage that's been done has been done at Bowen Complex first, just because it was the largest one to have completed. So all the signs are done. It's just a matter of getting the contractor to come in and install them. The Bowen Complex, and this one's even got a couple of pictures, which is kind of nice. Consider installing exterior directional signage to improve wayfinding. That's been completed. Consider installing tactile attention indicators at the top of an interior and exterior staircase to alert those with vision issues or blindness. In progress, we got several of them done, but we're not quite finished. Consider installing additional directional signage in the reception area and adjacent hallways. That's been completed. Consider installing handrails and seating along the hallway to assist those with mobility issues. That's in progress. Consider replacing knob-style door handles with lever type. That's in progress. And consider installing visual fire alarms where needed to alert those with hearing issues or deafness, and that is completed. So for the next phase of improvements, these have been approved by the Rick Hansen Foundation. I just got a call from them yesterday that these are all approved. So for the Nanaimo Aquatic Center, we have a product called a no-slip product. And we have a lot of folks that have a hard time navigating the pool deck, the showers, the washroom facilities. They get quite slippery. So this product actually increases the no-slip of those floors dramatically. It works quite well. It lasts about 2 years, and it has to be reapplied. So we've used it already and had great success. So this should greatly reduce any mobility issue problems that we have on those pool decks. So that's been approved, and we'll be working on that. Extra wayfinding, blade signage for the 3 facilities. We're still working on that. We need to be a little more, I guess, defined on what we want from Rick Hansen Foundation, but that should go forward, no problem. 4 new wheelchairs added to the inventory to assist with moving patrons with disabilities in the Nanaimo Aquatic Center and the Frank Crane Arena. The ones in the Nanaimo Aquatic Center are submersible, so you can take them right into the pool, which helps a lot. And installing automatic door openers at the Frank Crane Arena, that's been approved as well. So those are the next steps. The only one that's not on here that I talked to them about yesterday was putting in special handrails going up the bleachers in the Frank Crane Arena. So for folks that are having to climb those bleachers, the concrete bleachers, having more handrails that they can hang on to help them get up those stairs. So they're really good to work with. They've been very receptive to everything we put forward. And this will probably, at the end of this, be the end of how we work with them and their funding that they've offered to us. But it's all been very good, very, very positive experience. Future assessments, I won't read all of the different complexes and fields that we have that are recognized as areas where we can do some accessibility improvements. There are several. So this one is all of our all of our facilities, that public has access to. And without reading them all, you can see it's quite an extensive list. And then it gets into our parks. This is our destination parks. And there is again, quite a large list of parks that we have access to, or public has access to. Goes into our downtown parks. And when I started putting this list together, I forgot how many parks we actually have, and trails and systems, and it's quite the network. And it's great to see that we have all of these available to people to enjoy and use. But there's certainly challenges when it comes to making sure that they're all accessible and everyone can enjoy them to the fullest. And then sports fields and play fields, again, a large list. And I know that they are all well used, which is really good to see. So that's kind of the list of the different fields and different facilities that we have that do need to be assessed at one time or another. So we're going to be working on those as we can to get through them all. And as I said, future assessments, as previously discussed, 2 staff members receive specialized training from the Rick Hansen Foundation to perform assessments, audits. These staff members will be able to perform assessments instead of bringing in outside contractors. So the intention is to systematically do assessment audits of all city and Nanaimo facilities and parks and make improvements where needed. Some of those parks and some of those facilities won't take a very long assessment. Some of them are a little more in depth and will take a greater amount of time, but the whole idea is to find out where they can be improved and then act upon those. So again, the recommended facility to receive assessments in 2024 are Oliver Woods Community Center, Bevan Park Pool, Cliff McNabb Arena, the Nanaimo Ice Center, the Nanaimo Museum, Vancouver Island Military Museum, and City Hall in Sark. And that's it. If anyone has questions.
Questions at the table? Sean?
Yeah, so I like that one thing that the Rick Hansen Foundation paid for the first upgrades, any subsequent upgrades would be paid for by the city, correct? Like the Rick Hansen Foundation isn't going to keep giving money to the city to do these upgrades, so they're incumbent on the city to pay for, is that right? Great. So one of my questions just relates to, from what I'm seeing, and I don't know what other people think, but the training from Rick Hansen looks really good, and it looks like it covers a lot of bases, but then there's accessibility beyond that might not be covered in that training. And so before assessing other facilities, I wonder if there's an opportunity to finish the work on these ones and then assess if there are any gaps. I mean, that's what would be interesting to me, is to finish the work, assess if there are any gaps in accessibility that remain after doing those upgrades, supplement training for those 2 people where that's appropriate, and then sort of top up any accessibility measures.
No, thank you, Chair. Just to Sean, just a question. So would you want us to do that and then have the staff go into that assessment, or like some community
I think
members?
community, I mean, maybe the
members?
accessibility community could participate, or there are certainly organizations within Nanaimo that could participate in that. Different like Claytrain, NACL, CDC, different organizations could participate and say, hey, where are we with the accessibility in these spaces, and is there anything that was missed after those Rick Hansen upgrades? That's not what they're called, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And then do we need to provide any extra resources to take those places up and then apply that entire larger lens to subsequent facilities in the city?
So if I can answer, I think that's a wonderful idea. And I just wanted to also just do a caveat. The Rick Hansen Foundation work was great, but we were doing that kind of work before. It just, they helped us get to another, they had this nice program going and training, so that helped us. We were always trying to do it, but not always with the right lens. And one of the reasons council did this committee was so we could have more lenses on some stuff we know that we're missing. So I think that's a wonderful idea. Maybe we can come back with some ideas of how, once Mike's finished with those other facilities, how committee members would like to go through and see what they're thinking. Let's come back to you with some ideas. I think that's a wonderful idea.
I'm just going to do a follow-up over on that too. So I know that Mike and one other is trained. Is there any opportunity to train further, or is that require a budgeting thing? Or is there ability for like Mike or somebody to actually become an instructor in that to instruct more staff members? Is that?
I'll let Mike answer, but
Yeah, it was quite a long course. It was done through Vancouver Island, pardon me. Sorry, it was done.
That's all right.
But anyway, it was done through university, and so it's quite likely training. And then from there, you have to write an exam with the CSA. And then once you pass that, then you become what's called an auditor. But they do have training. You can access that training anytime. It's an ongoing course. Once they finish it, they start it over again. So there is an opportunity for anybody to take that course if they're interested in becoming an auditor.
Well, I'm glad that you did that, Mike. Thanks, Richard.
yeah, no, Chair, I think we can make committee members and staff aware of that training, because I believe it's an ongoing course. I think we did make it open to a lot of staff. 2 staff took the commitment to do it, and what I think we'll do is try and offer that every year. And then if there's some committee members that also want to, explore it, we're open to those also.
I think that's a good idea myself, because it shows us what staff's doing, how they're doing it, and gives us a better idea. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, because I do have a list. I had Jocelyn, I had Wendy, and then I had Richard.
I'm always really excited to see that this is sort of constantly on the work plan and going forward to review our facilities to make sure that they're more accessible. I mean, when we talked about the I think it's the Bubbin Rec Center, the one doesn't have an elevator. I know I've been very outspoken about the importance of that one also being brought up to accessibility because of the outages of the other aquatic center. That once that shuts down from 5 weeks, there's no accessible pool facility, which I think is a real shame, or fitness facility, which is a real shame. But that being said, I respect that the assessors of that facility indicated like the barriers that there are to making it accessible. My one sort of personal comment is the Westwood Lake Trail. I would really love to have that considered. I missed the last meeting and I saw that it was on the agenda, so my apologies if this has already been addressed, but that is such a beautiful trail, and there's such potential for it to be usable by people who are using strollers and wheelchairs and scooters, but for one extremely large tree trunk and some hills at one end, and I think it's a really in need of being addressed, as it is right now. It's not super equitable for the rest of the city who can't climb over it, even though most of the rest of the trail is really quite doable. So I would really like to see that higher up on the list.
Great point, because that is it's one that is really used, and we really work, like at the last meeting, I was really impressed to see the work that staff has been working on to get that done and bring it up to standard. So really good point, thank you. Wendy?
If I can remember my both points, I have 2. When you're talking about having people come in and look at the facilities, I would like to see people with diverse abilities to come in, not just the managers or so real people with real experience to come in and look at it. The other one is around the parks. It's really important to have accessible, but you don't make it so people who enjoy the walk up and down the hill, like to get fitter, not to take that away.
I think there's a good option there where we could maybe look at that. Which ones do we think are more challenging, and focus on the ones that aren't as challenging? Like Westwood we hear is very important, so that could be a priority for us. I don't know Neck Point very well, but maybe that's another one. I know Piper's is hard because there's ups and downs and stuff, so I think that's where when we look at the priorities of the parks, that this group would have some good ideas as to which ones you think should be the ones that are first. So good point, Wendy.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, just to mention again, I think I mentioned at the beginning that we'll come back in March with Parks and Open Space. And so the committee can comment on some of those priorities.
Yeah, so keep that's a really good point to keep in mind. I've got Richard and then Bay. And then Linda.
Thank you, Chair. So I want to ask a clarifying question. When the pool at Bowen Park was selected, is it just the actual pool facility, or does it also include the actual recreation part of the facility where like the lawn bowling and the indoor day camps and indoor kind of actual meeting spaces are located?
I'll turn that over to Mike.
At Bowen Park, the entire complex, so everything minus kin pool. They didn't do the pool, but they did the entire complex itself and included the lawn bowling section as well.
Follow up, Richard?
Good, because I just know that there's plenty of blind people that use the lawn bowling area there. And there's like special needs, I think, camps that often meet in that space too. So I'm glad it was.
Thanks. Babe?
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to those sort of priorities for the parks there. And I mentioned accessibility to those parks. And I wanted to mention that accessibility to them from bus stops and through bus routes is important. For example, unless you're quite fit, you can't get from the bus stop up to Westwood Lake, but you can easily get to Matthew Sutton Park, or there's several that are right on bus route, and that might be a good place to start.
That's great. If you could bring that up when we get into parks too, in case they forget about it, that's a. So those are things I'd like us to think about, like from your perspective. Which parks do you think will be easiest to be done for people from different needs? Because you all represent different groups, right? So there may be, like, you may say something and you may disagree with it, right? So I think it's really important that we have that conversation. Great. Anything further, Babe? No. Okay, I have Linda and then Nicole.
I wanted to say, I think, a little bit of reassurance. The Rick Hansen Foundation is coming out with a new version 4 standard next week. It has a category for neurodiversity, and they're calling it mind friendly. They've got a whole new category for libraries. They've got a whole new category just for universal washrooms. They used to be lumped in with bathrooms. They're pretty comprehensive with vision and with hearing. So within the organization itself, they're trying to cover more and more a wider type of disabilities. And to maintain your certification, you have to write an exam by the end of this January on version 4. So they require ongoing training so that people who are certified keep up to date. So that might be a little reassuring for folks.
Thanks, Linda. Were you aware of that, Mike?
They told me July, but yeah, they talked about that some time ago, but yeah.
So you guys are looked after them?
Yep, I've got till July to read that part.
Nicole.
Two separate things. So the one related to the transit accessibility, I'm wondering if there is any plans for coordination with the school district where our facilities butt up against each other and the bus especially is on the, you have to go through the school district properties. For example, at NAG, the bus stops in front of NDSS. There's a lot of accessibility issues between that bus stop and the front door of NAC. So while we have accessible parking stalls for those that drive or are driven, we don't have a way for anybody accessing public transit.
So can I make a suggestion on that? If you're willing and able to, I sit on, because transit is dealt through the PRDA, it's not dealt through the city. Would you be able to come and make a presentation to the RDA and Transit Committee about your concerns? Or have somebody that you know do that, or send me some emails on it and then I can forward it to them to bring up to
I can send you some emails for sure.
Okay. Yeah.
I think though, like the school district has a parallel committee to this that I also sit on, and they know that this is an issue, but it's sort of like a jurisdictional, like, well, we're one entity and the city's one entity, so I'm wondering if there's any coordination already between staff.
Well, you see, city's not involved in it, it's their regional district. For the most
No,
part.
okay, but the bus stop is not the issue, sorry. The bus stop is where the bus stop is.
Okay.
A person getting off the bus, are you familiar with what
Yeah,
I'm talking
I
about?
know what you're talking about.
You get off
You mean the
bus.
path, right?
The path leads you through NDSS parking lot, I think you have to go across like a grassed area that
Yes,
might have
I
some
know what you mean,
pavement.
yes.
And then you've got some curb cuts that are incomplete, you've got poor lighting, poor signage. You've got a lot of issues, some of which exist on city property and some exist.
So just gonna ask Mr. Sims, is that something you guys deal with when you do have your joint meetings at the RDS?
It is, yes, and part of, I was gonna jump in on this too, but it's been part of the work of our transportation group. Will be working with the committee, and I believe they're coming in March as well to talk specifically about transit stop accessibility, so this would be an extension of that Bridget's got.
I think it's really important that we do this because the RDN, the way their accessibility committee is not people from the community, it's staff.
Yes.
It's staff members, so it's really important that because we are involved through, because some of our bus stops are ours, some are the RDNs, but transit actually is handled through that. And I sit on the transit committee that we bring these concerns forward, and maybe, like I said, maybe down the line, we look at doing a presentation to the RDN and transit about the issues that we see, but we got lots of time on that, Mr. Hart.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to it, because I was looking to jump in when Bay asked the question, because I think, a lot of this is on the building, but I think we still need to go out from the building and see if that access to it. But what I would say is that we have an incredibly good working relationship with the school district. And so if their committee is going, and we also have a lot of joint use agreements with that whole complex. We call it stadium district and sports district. So we can work on that, because I know exactly what you mean on that, and we can work with the school board on that access through.
So I have a question then. Could we, just so that we can show that's been raised, maybe have a motion that staff work with school district, RDN to deal with that issue?
That's fine.
I know it's nice to make references, but I kind of like to have it formal so that we can come back and show that this was something done by this committee, it was a motion, it was dealt with, get it endorsed by council. Because then it carries a little bit more weight, because it is, I know staff, but then it becomes a council priority. So I don't know if you feel like we.
I'll make the motion, but I'd like your wording.
Okay, so the wording will be that city staff work with the regional district of Nanaimo Transit and School District 68 to develop a plan to deal with accessible issues at bus stops located in the jurisdiction of the school district. Does that work?
Well, is the main issue though, to look at NAC? Is that
Well, that's my one concrete example.
That's just one example, because there's others.
Yeah, I'm sure there's more out there.
It's the only one we have that we're together,
Yeah.
I'd say with a major, five major facilities that we're all together in one
Yeah.
spot. So we don't have a lot of other.
How about we just use within the city? And then, is that where Mr. Sims, you want?
Well, I was thinking, I kind of thinking along the same lines as Richard, because that's a pretty obvious one.
So let's just use that one for
That
now,
one,
and then
and-
if others come up, we can bring it forward, or you can let me know. Okay, to work, to deal with the bus stop issue at NDSS,
And yeah.
which allows access to
NAC and the stadium.
And what about the track field?
Well, and
That's
stadium
behind NAC?
district, yeah, the stadium.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So that's moved by Nicole, can I have a seconder?
I'll second it, please.
Richard will second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries, thank you. Now, I'd like us to just get some motion on some of the
That's
stuff.
a good one, it's one we've been wanting to deal with for a while.
Because then that just gives us a little bit more gumption, and no offense to staff, but it just makes it as a priority. Okay, now Bay, you had a second? Or sorry, Nicole did. I'm sorry, then Bay.
It's a quick question. It's just the two of you that are trained in Rick Hansen, do you review all plans for new builds and renovations within projects? I think I saw on here something about the new sports fields at Harewood or something, or maybe it's not the new ones, but when there's a new build, do you guys review those plans in advance?
It comes to here as well.
Oh, okay.
It comes to this table, so any new plan that we're looking at, like we had the Loudon Park come to the table, and suggestions were made about widening the path, we need an accessible washroom, blah, blah, blah. And then this committee will make a recommendation or a motion, and then we'll go forward. So it's been for the, go ahead, sir.
Yeah. No, and then with, yes, so as Councillor Armstrong said, well, new bills that we can bring those to the committee. Mike is also in charge of most of those upgrades. So he is responsible for all recreational buildings. But we haven't started that formal response to that, but he is the one also doing the upgrades.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's one thing that's really good, like your staff has been very committed, so if there's a new project coming up and they feel that if there's gonna be issues, it will come to this committee to look at, as well as the design advisory panel on some, not all, but on some. Vinnie, did you have something further?
It was just about the what she was talking about there, that walkway.
Richard, I see your hand still up, do you have something new? It's just okay, now I would like to have a motion on the facilities recommended to receive assessments and audits in 2024, if somebody wants to move that. Anybody want to move it? I moved. Thank you, Tammy. Moved by Tammy, seconded by Councillor Eastmere. Any further discussion on those? I personally like the list because I think that's the ones that are most used by people, so. Sorry, go ahead.
May I ask a clarifying question? Version 4 of the Rick Hansen Foundation audit was mentioned, so version 4 would be applied to the audits that we're contemplating in this motion?
Yeah, we certainly would. Yeah, if it's required to be in there now, we'll.
The most recent version. Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Has the Nanaimo Art Gallery been considered in this? Because they have that 2 levels.
They're actually looking at a new.
They're looking at a new facility.
Yeah, so that's, yeah.
But it can be, it's just we prioritize on these ones, but it could be looked at. There is an elevator in there, it just doesn't always work.
To that one little 2 steps down or whatever.
Yeah, so there's some.
But people go outside and then they go in.
Yeah.
Like,
That's a good point.
okay.
Okay, so any further discussion on facilities and audits? I'll call the question, all in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, now we're on to new business, I believe. Yep. Gotta get to my other sheet. So our other business, and I'll get Alexandria to introduce it, is this new one that she brought forward.
Yes, I wanted to ensure that the committee was aware of the Inclusion BC conference, Everybody Belongs, which is being hosted in Nanaimo at the end of May and in very early June, which is a very exciting opportunity, I think, to showcase Nanaimo's commitment to accessibility and inclusion. And so I wanted to see if this conference was at all on the city's radar, whether or which staff, who would be responsible for creating, for creating awareness perhaps within the downtown core. The DNDIA came to mind as an organization that could be pulled on board to ensure that they're showcasing, that all the members of the DNDIA are showcasing to the best of their ability inclusiveness and accessibility during the conference.
I can bring it to the chamber's attention too, because we'll learn more. Mr. Hardy.
I personally was not aware of it, but the staff could be, but it's a really good one we should be aware of. Lisa, were you guys aware of this one?
I learned about it on the high agenda, so thank you so much for bringing it to our attention, and I did forward it to some different staff in our planning departments, because I think, yeah, it's very interesting.
I'm wondering, because I read something further on that after we got that, and I think they were looking for presentations, et cetera.
They are.
So I'm wondering, do you think it would be worthwhile if we did do a presentation on what the city's doing? And maybe have like a city staff member and a committee member or something? You know, like to show that, because I personally believe we're far ahead of many cities on what we're doing working with that. So it might be a good way to showcase what the committee's doing, but maybe we can talk about that, because we do have time. And I think, I don't know, Hillary, if you or I could register to go to it as well.
Yeah, I'm certainly interested.
I'm quite interested in it too, I just have to check my calendar.
But I wonder if there's a committee member who might also.
Yeah.
I believe the deadline for proposals for workshops, et cetera, is the 15th of January.
Monday.
Maybe you and I can talk and Dylan
Yeah,
can
so,
talk.
you know, thank you for this, and, and there's also, I know a lot of these conferences come in, there's also tours. So, and there's a number of things this committee's been involved with, particularly our inclusive playground. So maybe we can reach out to this organization. I don't know if you have direct contact or not, you could share with us.
Something that's already been done, which I think might be good, looking at Lisa and Emily down there, is to show exactly how we built it into our work plans. So that people see this is what we're doing, this is what we do, because, I mean, it wouldn't take that long because you've already done it. I don't know, just throw that out as ideas, right? Because I found that very useful so that you can see where we built it in, how the city, because, I mean, this is my third council, and this is the first time that we're actually monitoring what's been done on our plans and actually putting our plans to use, so. And the fact that we're yeah, so that might be an idea, but I think we could maybe sit down, or myself, Hillary, and, sorry.
No, I was just gonna add that, just in looking at, I was trying to research when pulling the information to put on the agenda, just to see if there was any information yet on costs associated for conference attendance, and I don't know if that's come out since the agenda was put out. But there is a very small budget attached to each of the committees. So in speaking with with my director, she indicated that we could probably fund one of the committee members to attend the conference in addition with perhaps a council member, so that.
We have our own budget, so we're okay.
Yeah, so this could, the budget could include a registration for a member.
I know Sean, you had a question.
Yeah, so two things. One, I think some of us will be going through our respective organizations regardless. I'm going through NACL, very likely I imagine Alex is going through Playtree, so some of us might be going anyway. But I think it's good to offer the opportunity to other members of the committee. The other thing I wanted to point out was in the equity and inclusivity actions, 4.213 or 4.2.13, work with the advisory committee on accessibility and inclusiveness and other orgs to identify ways to create a welcoming, inclusive atmosphere in the city, including city-owned facilities. So it seems like it would be a good milestone to aim for. I know Cheryl likes saying, here's the thing we did by the state, and we all like that. Yeah. So if there's a particular milestone or something that we would want to say, by the time this conference happens on May 30th, this is what we've done to make the city a more inclusive place for the people that are going to be coming here during that conference. Here's what the target is and what we want to achieve by that. I think that could be a good thing to aim for that's in line with the immediate priorities.
Like looking at how we're doing this stuff with the loops and IT stuff, like, you know, that.
Sure.
Because I do think our city's progressing, you know, we could do better, but I think we're doing better than a lot, so I think we should be showcasing what we're trying to do and how important the committee is to get us where we're going.
And I think with the focus area of the downtown, because that's where a lot of people are going to be, so kind of looking around and whether that's, I know it's not necessarily within the scope of the audits and assessments in terms of that, but if there are city-owned facilities downtown that could be a priority, or there could be options to look at sort of the downtown more holistically as a city and say, is it an inclusive place based on our knowledge of what makes places inclusive?
Like the rebuild of the Moffett Sutton washrooms, which are going to be inclusive, yeah.
Yeah, so sort of even mapping that out so that when people arrive, they can sort of say, oh, here's Nanaimo, and here are places that are accessible.
So maybe what we'll do with that is that we'll leave it with staff for now, and then obviously, if we're going to do something, we'll have to get forward, but then we can update it the next meeting as to what the, I think it's great. So thank you for bringing that forward. Go ahead.
As Sean mentioned, C 4.2.13 in the IEP seems to, directly to this. I also noticed on C 4.2.7, which looked at education around business owners and washroom access, I think was the item, and that is another potential specific item that we could look at promoting. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. And I just okay. I see Wendy.
So you're talking about inclusive places in Nanaimo, the Family Support Institute, which is one of my other hats. has a map and it has places in Nanaimo. It's not complete of what is accessible, inclusive. And there's 3 things. I can't remember the third one, but that's a map that you can bring up. It's called My BC, I think it's called. And on there, you click Nanaimo or you type in Nanaimo, and then you can see what places people have recommended in Nanaimo that are inclusive.
It's great to know, thank you. Okay, any further questions on this topic? Not seen any, so now we're going to go to Inclusion BC Housing, which is Wendy for your.
So last time I was here, at the last meeting, I talked very briefly at the end about what Inclusion BC came to Nanaimo, but they've been to other places as well. So this is, a lot of it is just for information about the fact sheets that they wanted to put out to everybody. Like the inclusive housing means people live in their own homes and feel part of the community. That is so important. So they're not excluded. The next one is about what does inclusive housing mean? You know, they have a choice. They don't have to go to this house just because there is a space there. Thinking of group homes or something like that. Or there's some housing, someone is offering their basement suites to stay in, and it's not, the people aren't compatible, so not to just throw them in there. Affordable, which is really, I'm sure we've talked about having affordable housing. And this is the next one, I don't know where you are too, talking about intellectual and how many people are looking for, this is BC, 5,000 people are still looking for homes, and a lot of people are still living at home, and they don't really want to live with their parents forever. And this, I'm on, I know, 5 pillars of inclusive housing, trying to get it so everyone is involved in that. The developer, so getting them to have housing that is affordable, and it's normally below, so keeping it to PWD rates, people with diverse ability rates, which is currently 500. Can you rent something for 500? I'm not sure about that. Having the right supports in place. And number 3 is about making communities complete. So we don't have all the people with blue eyes living in one area, another one with all brown eyes living in another area. You know, you want a mix of people, older, younger, different diverse abilities, different ethnic groups. And the Article 19, I think my daughter sent you something on that, which you didn't read out. Different factors on all of that. One of the ones I like there is the sense of autonomy, so they can feel independent, even if they have people coming in supporting them. It's their place. Inclusive, I did that one. Convention, I don't know if you're all aware of convention and right of people with diverse abilities. Respect same civil political rights as anybody else, and the need. It is a big need in the community, as we are all very aware, and we've brought that up several times in this committee about inclusive housing. And I think it's been something about the provincial government has said how many houses that Nanaimo needs to do. And I think this is the last one. In turn, inclusive housing and what it means to people, having choice, having control, having autonomy, independence, dignity, and diverse ability. And I'm just going to scroll through this. I'm very aware of the time. And it's not just housing for people with a diverse ability. It doesn't matter what it is. It's being a community. So being able to, maybe someone wants to live on the top floor and they use a wheelchair. So making the place compatible to having wider doorways, having a wider bathroom and things like that. So making sure that this, I want to live on the top floor, but how can we get to there? Obviously, elevators. And they say it's the biggest barrier. There you go. I finished.
Great, thank you.
Was I quick enough?
It was awesome, because I had some questions for question period. But thank you very much for forwarding this. I actually posted on Facebook too and got a lot of thanks, so.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, so I have questions.
There is one there that I think I can answer. The first one is that when are the meetings? And the meetings are every second month on the Wednesday, and they are listed on our website. The next one will be on March 13th at 4 o'clock. And the agendas are on the city website.
The NIMO website?
Yes, yes.
I found it because my friend told me about it. So what time are you usually at?
They're 4 to 6 p.m.
I'm in school right now, so I can't go to university, but I'm really, really interested, and I want to make some changes. I have some ideas and I want to share them. Is it at 4 o'clock?
Yeah, they're from 4 to 6 p.m. and also they are, I believe, they're on the website and they're also recorded. So if you ever want to go back to see any of the meetings, you can go back and take a look at past meetings for sure.
And I would like to let you know that Linda Dirksen, who's on our committee, she's up at VIU and she deals with a lot of those issues, so she's a resource for you at VIU.
Well, I'm actually in the EA program at VIU, and a lot of these things are corresponded to what I've experienced in the past or things that I've thought about. I just wanted to connect.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you for being here and sharing your concerns.
Send me an email, Bae.
Pardon? Oh, it wasn't me.
No, that's somebody in
Oh,
the audience,
sorry.
Linda. It's a student from
Okay.
VIU.
Oh, okay.
So then I've got John Yost on inclusive language.
Oh, I think I wrote some things in that sheet. I don't remember. I'd like to connect with some people here for my class at VIU, and I would like to get my teacher Teresa to contact this committee or something. Is there an email that I could forward to anyone?
Linda, do you deal with that at VIU, or what's your recommendation?
What is it that?
I was just wondering if I could get this committee somehow involved with my class and we could have a discussion about inclusivity, accessibility, things like that.
That's up to Cheryl.
Oh.
Because she wants to get this committee involved.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe I could get this whole committee involved. I don't know if that's possible.
I don't know.
Like,
This
I mean,
is
if
a
there's
city committee.
Yeah, it's a city committee, so you could certainly come here, or if you wanted to make a presentation.
I see.
Sometimes we have had an individual in the past where they've perhaps done a survey.
I did an accessibility survey, and they really liked my ideas. I called the city of Nanaimo for about 40 minutes. They really liked what I had to say, but I didn't think it was very good, but I just wanted to come.
Well, certainly if you're doing a research project and you have survey questions, we're happy to, through legislative services, circulate them to the community members, who I'm sure would be happy to.
It's for my own interest, really, because I'm just really passionate
And
about
also, just about anybody that sits on this committee belongs to an organization. I'm sure their organizations would welcome getting into the university to speak on their particular committees. Like
I do have a practicum at Clay Tree.
We have Clay Tree here.
Nice to meet you, I'm Sonia.
Sorry, go ahead, Sean.
Oh, I just, because I know Sonia. Hi, Sonia.
Yes.
From other stuff, and so just as members of the committee, are we able to go out to the community, gather information from other people and bring it back to the committee?
Certainly, I think
Like that's
so
part of it,
important.
so if we wanna, certainly Sonia can come as a delegation or members, but also
100%.
I
I
could.
don't know I don't know much about politics, but.
Well, what a delegation means is that if you have a project you want to talk about, you sign up at the city website, say, I'd like to come talk about accessibility.
Okay.
Then you'd be able to come here and you'd have 5 minutes to give us your presentation,
Okay.
and then we would ask questions of you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a good
I'll
option.
think about it down the road. I'm quite busy with school right now.
Yeah,
Just other
but
stuff.
that's an
I'll
option,
think about
but
it down the road, for sure.
like, as you're connected to some of the community or committee members here, if you have concerns, if you're comfortable going to them, they can
I'm good speaking in front of
Yeah,
people.
yeah, but they're certainly good for bringing them to our table, like you saw today, the email came in from.
Very interesting.
Yeah, from Alexandria, so, and we put it on our agenda under new business and to discuss it. Now, there was a second question, and that was on inclusive language.
Yes.
Do you want to pass the microphone to?
Oh. Are you sure? Oh, I want to connect with Hillary about some of my ideas. That's
Yeah, I'll message you, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I will on Instagram.
Perfect.
Hi, I'm Joel, and I'm here with Sonia. So actually, sorry in advance, couldn't write an additional thing on there because, well, the paper's over there, right? But I think for personally in my it wouldn't be universal, but personally, I do myself believe that the term diverse abilities itself is not necessarily the best use, as was mentioned before, because it does, in a sense, imply that being less able to do something is something more to be ashamed of, rather than something that each individual may have trouble in. And on that line, there are, I think, importance in potentially using slightly more archaic terms. For example, you're seeing an uprise in hate towards trans and non-conforming peoples, especially among the right wing. But for gender-neutral bathrooms, I myself don't necessarily like, not because the idea, but we've had such things for decades, and they were called unisex. That using such archaic language would be more important to show that things have existed for a longer time rather than constantly updating in a euphemism treadmill. But this more applies to insults, but mute once, dumb once used to mean mute. Or, can't quite bring them up the top of my head, but there are many examples quite like that. That it's not, that one must not necessarily constantly update terms for, and I just said because it, in a way, removes the idea that it existed already for a long time.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, cognizant of the time, last question, so can I have a motion to adjourn?
You have Wendy.
Oh, Wendy?
Yes, it's me again. Whoever was wanting someone to come in and talk to them at BIU, I have a traveling show of several people with diverse abilities who come in and can talk to the BIU. So you can freely give them my email address.
Hillary's gonna look after that.
Yep.
And,
Okay, that's it.
Thanks. So just so you know too, I'm turning the chair over to Hillary for the next year, so she'll be the new chair because we alternate. And then I really enjoy chairing, but it's her turn, which is great. So thank you all. So our next meeting is, when did you say?
March 13th.
March 13th? At 4 p.m. At 4 p.m. So if I could have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Sean, seconded by Nicole, all in favor. Motion carries. Thank you all.